Fuzzy Lawgic. It is 8 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, which means it is time to get into the hairy things between ethical, legal, and social things that are impacting brands and businesses here on Fuzzy Lawgic. I'm here with Elsie Escobar. Hello, Elsie.
Hello.
Good morning to Mr. Gordon Firemark. How are you?
Hello, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Oh, yeah, you're wearing green. I'm so glad you're on top of it. And, of course, we also have Bree Campano here in the background who is going to roll our opening credits. Thank you, Bree. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Bree, for that awesome roll. We need our graphics. We got to have all the things in line. My name is Trevor Tomian. I am the founder of Common Leaders in Pneumospec Media, and I am here to moderate a little bit today, although I heard from a bird both ahead of time today and a little bit from yesterday that we are fired up about some stuff.
Are we?
That we have a little, that we are walking into this space with a little bit of a fire lit in our belly. Is that an accurate assessment, y'all? How y'all feeling?
I don't know. I mean, you know.
Okay.
It's fun. We talk about fire things here. We don't get into things for the sake of just casually observing them because we have plenty of non-competitors in the media space, whether it be podcasting or in journalism or on TV, that get into lots of cool, shallow stuff to keep us distracted on one hand while the other hand is doing all the other things. We are here to get into a little bit of deep stuff today. And one of the cool things, and one of my favorite episodes that we have done so far in concept, at least, we'll see how it goes, is today's episode. We are going to be looking back a little bit to review some of the things we've already talked about in artificial intelligence and privacy, disclosures, and a little bit of influencer talk today, but that'll always be kind of baked into what we do here. Then we're going to look a little bit forward into what's coming next here at Fuzzy Lawgic. So for all of those reasons, I'm super duper stoked. I know that the both of you have been looking backwards, especially at privacy. We have AI to cover. We have copyright. We have a couple of different things to get into today, but I want to jump right in with privacy because there are some things impacting podcasters. Is that right, Elsie, that you have been deep in the weeds on the podcaster privacy issue, specifically with the podcaster who got doxed? Is it called doxed? Did I get that term right?
Yeah, but it wasn't actually. I don't think this podcaster got doxed, if you will. It's just about it. Yeah, no. I think that we might be talking about.
That was the title of the article. Is I got doxed by a TikToker in 30 minutes. I think. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, you are correct. This is true. But that specific article, it was kind of tongue in cheek because she did it on purpose. She asked this TikToker to find out her birthday. And they did a little bit of a sort of reverse engineering off of the information that we often share online, even though the person who was writing this article had all things private. You know, they had a private account on Instagram. I think there were many private accounts that she had. And she essentially just asked her because she heard about this TikToker that was doing these things. And the TikToker in 30 minutes was able to browse through all of her online footprints. And because of the connections that she had to the person that because of the connections that the author had who were open and were not private, she was able to discern and deduce facts about her life based on historical posts from the other people connected to the person. So as in, like, if you're private, nobody can see your stuff. But let's say your mom posted, "Happy birthday to Trevor. Yay, we celebrated his whatever birthday," even, or, "Hey, Trevor, congratulations on your graduation from XYZ." And so people can deduce facts about you about where you live, what your birthday is, and all kind of stuff based on what other people share about you.
It's Gordon, I wondered, is there any restriction on that from a business standpoint, or is there any restrictions on businesses that would help protect people's information? Like, whose burden is it in that case? Because I can see how that gets kind of confusing in the midst there, but whose responsibility is it to not share that in that scenario? Is it mom's problem for having posted and not being private? Is it the business for allowing that to happen, or is it the perpetrator for having looked?
I think it's the mom. I think that to the extent that the person who is about whom the information is being revealed has some, you bear some responsibility for being there in the first place, in a sense, and for choosing your friends. And you don't choose your mother, but well, there's some argue that you do, but you have to educate the people around you if you want that kind of thing kept private. Now, someone knowing your birthday standing alone, that's not such a big deal. But someone knowing your birthday and where you work and what city you live in and who you went to and what your first dog's name was and what your parents' maiden names, that makes it's getting easier to steal an identity. And so this is a cautionary tale about what we share on social and in public, but also that we all need to be thinking about what we share, not just about ourselves, but about others. And
yeah, I would love to see the business take on that responsibility, if I'm being straight up about it. Like, I think that the general public probably shouldn't be expected to know all of the things that are privacy law. So I would love to see Facebook in this scenario that you're mentioning, Elsie, or whoever is responsible for sharing those posts, I think has a really big responsibility that they're missing, because the general public has never been known to necessarily make the smartest decisions with their information and money. Sometimes they need some good leadership in that
realm. Let me ask you a question about that, Trevor. Would you trust an AI to figure out whether or not information that's being shared about you or anyone is public or private? And actually, I just saw this come up on a comment on my YouTube feed today, where somebody who makes police videos about police doing their thing. Apparently, YouTube is taking down some of the videos now when the person's license plate is visible. Or something like that, because there's some personal information that can be gathered from that, and they're making a privacy argument. Now, YouTube must have set an algorithm to identify these kinds of videos. They just don't have them. Look, there is no manpower enough to do it on the scale that it would be necessary when you think about, what is it, a few million hours of
sure. Don't they crowdsource that though? In a lot of cases, like, where you can report it?
Some, yeah, but I mean, really, then okay. So if you crowdsource it, now you're vulnerable to the malicious takedown.
Right. That's where. Well, no, I don't disagree with you. I think oversight is the key. You're right, and you can't trust just the algorithm any more than you can trust just one person. And you can't trust the algorithm any more than you can trust mom, I think, in this case. So if we're not going to put it on the algorithm, I don't think we should put it solely on mom either.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is us as individuals. It is incumbent upon us to have certain information that we really genuinely protect and keep private. And we're starting to be trained to do that with our passwords. Some people are much better at it than others. Myself in the others category. But see, now just by saying that out loud, that might, if somebody wanted to go and try to track me down and find my passwords and access my stuff, I might have just invited it. I'll tell you that I'm much more strict about my financial stuff and things that sort of matter than, what's my password to, I don't know, some silly little website that I needed to look at, or the New York Times or something like that. So there's degrees of privacy as well. But I don't think we live in a world anymore where it's reasonable to expect that we have that much privacy. I think last week or the week before, Elsie, you were talking about protecting your whereabouts as private information, and I think that's really important. And there are other aspects of our lives that we need to take the proper precautions for, and others where we just have to accept that it's not. not private anymore. If you go on Facebook, it asks you your birthday and it reminds your friends, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday. Be sure to send them a message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we saying we don't want Facebook to do that? Doesn't that take the social out of
It gives
media?
us the option to. I don't share my birthday on social media
Okay.
because I don't like the attention. It's got nothing to do with the privacy. But that being said, I wanted to switch gears a little bit. We're getting a little bump from our friend in the back, and Bree, and she popped up here and says, if an AI system is trained on biased or inaccurate data, it may produce results that are also biased or inaccurate. That seems totally legit. And we've heard that. I mean, we've only recently started to hear that a little bit in the news about algorithms and how they play with things like race and gender and typical demographics that we've been mishandling for a long time, and the algorithms seem to do a pretty good job there too. So additionally, if an AI system is designed to prioritize certain outcomes or objectives, it may skew its reporting to favor those outcomes, even if they are not entirely truthful. What you got, Gordon?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's that recent that police departments have been using facial recognition technology for a long time, and the number of false positives, particularly in the data set that is outside the set that the systems were trained with. So the systems were trained with white faces, and that means the systems are vulnerable to the idea that all black faces look the same. And those false positives really betray that truth, that the systems are flawed in that way. And so, I mean, I think that argues for, let's expand the data sets that we use to train things to be more inclusive. But we are trusting and relying on systems without knowing whether they were properly trained. And that's really, really dangerous.
Is more data the answer to solving this, do you think, Elsie?
I don't think more data is, but the right people in leadership positions to be able to intelligently and strategically be able to see those biased things that you might not be able to see. Because in any situation, whether or not, let's say, I want to be as diverse as possible. I want to have all people everywhere and all the time, and my heart is super open or something like that. And I'm asked, let's pretend I'm designing cover art for a new podcast, right? And I want to be as awesome and open and inclusive, and I'm working, and I happen to be a man, and I'm working with a woman, and she's like, I want, my show is empowering women, and can you design me something? And the man's like, I want to design something for you, like totally supportive. But they come back with pink and curly cues and lots of flowers and very culturally historical feminine vibes. And we are not, and as a woman, I can tell you, sometimes I like pink, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like curly things. Sometimes I'm not into that vibe.
I like pink a lot.
I know, but what I'm saying is that even if we want like this, so this person had their heart, I want to help. They wanted to help, and they want to be inclusive, but they don't have the lens of being able to not classify based on these stereotypes that are deeply ingrained in what we are and who we are. Yeah. And so if you start to teach an AI to treat, let's say, black faces and go like, oh, wait, not all black faces are the same. Oh, they're not, so there's a lot of learning that has to go into that face structure, like really looking deep. And sometimes people who are really immersed in those cultures and have understanding of language, let's talk English versus Spanish, Spanish language as a whole, there's different words in Spanish that are the same word and mean different things. You wouldn't know that because you would think that that word will just be the same word. So there's a lot of nuance, and I think diversity within the leadership of design is so important versus the thing itself.
Yeah, I'm cheering for that all day. Get more people in positions to have oversight on these things. I think that the oversight piece is going to be how we transition for AI. I mean, to me, that's the only possible solution to keep it on the rails and keep it somewhat under wraps, is to not just hit the start button and assume it's going to do our bidding for us automatically like ChatGPT does on a text. That's totally different than what you're talking about, Elsie, where and Gordon, what you brought up, where we're making kind of like life and death, hugely impactful decisions for people based on how these algorithms that we don't fully understand how they drive us. And I would like to submit that probably some human eyes is going to be really helpful.
Well, you know, bias is a really tricky thing because anytime, even if you're conscious that you are biased, you're not conscious of exactly how or exactly what, and you may only be scratching the surface of your bias, and so I don't think that a human oversight is going to work. It's going to have to be oversight by committees, and then we have to make sure that the committees are, equal, proper representation, and then you get into questions of, well, if there's a minority group, does that percentage in society get reflected in the percentage on the committee? And and then you're still perpetuating some kind of an unfairness, or so it's a really complicated situation. And I think we just have to accept that it's going to take us a while, if we ever get there, to a true, genuine, unbiased, even-handed look at things. And it's just incumbent on everybody to be vocal when they see the injustice.
And bringing it up and talking about it and making sure the people that got resources, that, like Elsie, you're saying, to put these kind of committees, to whatever it is, the people that have the resources to lead these discussions, that the businesses, the people with the money, they are the ones that we need to look to, I think, in this. So I hope that these discussions don't stop. I think that is going to be critical because it is ever evolving. We need to ask tough questions and not let them go when they're hard, like we do. That's what we do here, is we stay on them because they're tough and they're worthwhile, and having those issues constantly up. And I would like to say, just for my part, that I hope that we are more intentional with putting more faces of color in those positions, because if that counterbalances a little bit, I think it's probably time to counterbalance that. If there was ever a time in history to recounterbalance that so it works against a dude like me, I'm okay with it, and I hope it happens soon. But that being said, I want to get into where we're headed next. We got a little bit into artificial intelligence. However, we didn't get a whole lot into how that's driving revenue and how that's driving money in the industry. And a lot of things have been changing. We talked about artificial intelligence like it feels like a lifetime ago. And I wondered, specifically with AI and how it's impacting what you're seeing in the media industry, do you have any updates for us on what you're hearing about ChatGPT? Because when we talked about it, we were fresh. We were like the first ones there, which I thought was super cool. We were some of the first people publicly that were talking about AI because it was in our plans. What are you seeing as you go to conferences and talk to people in your worlds that is changing, and how are people utilizing it? And what are you seeing as questions coming up from podcasters with artificial intelligence? Elsie, what are you hearing from because you have the corporate side with Libsyn, you have the not-for-profit and the more community-based part with She Podcast, and then of course you have your own takes on it. And what are you seeing with artificial intelligence and how it's evolving really quickly since we talked about it last?
I think what I've seen in terms of folks creating, adding AI to the tools that we're already using, that's something that I've seen that is changing pretty quickly. Being able to add AI solutions to the development of SaaS platforms and whatnot, or even adding AI to things like Notion, things like that. There's a lot of platforms that have already been using AI, like Descript, which is a tool that a lot of podcasters use to do their editing. But that is what you've been using. So that's something for folks to kind of pay attention to. In terms of what I would talk about in terms of the everyday podcaster versus the corporate, the everyday podcaster is kind of opening up themselves to being able to find easier workflows and being able to do more things faster and have sort of like the support of that team that a lot of podcasters just simply don't have at the moment. So those things are moving very, very fast. The developer community is also moving very, very fast and creating tools. Like I have a tool that I use on my Mac that is essentially it was a free tool, and I still paid for it to this developer dude because he's creating it, and it's like it's a local copy, not a local copy. It's a little app on my computer that works off of Chat GPT, and so I don't have to go on the website to do it. It just pops up, and then I can just talk to it right there. And it's a little tiny little app, and it's free actually. It's called Mac GPT. Shout out to this developer who is in Europe, I believe, and it's so it's really great to be able to see that kind of stuff right now. Now, Gordon, I'm sending this off to you because you were just at a conference, and there seemed to have been some talk about Chat GPT or AI conversations there. Oh, you're muted.
Gordon, you look great, but we can't hear you.
Sometimes it's better that way. My
Welcome
first
back.
impression is everybody's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And my takeaway from the conference was, yeah, there were some interesting new tools coming into the game. There's obviously, we talk about Descript. There's another one, CapShow, that is about creating show notes and things using AI from transcription of your content and things like that. There was a fellow there who's just launching an editing tool, video editing tool, that is going to use AI and some fuzzy logic to identify clips from your videos that it can then turn into short form video and those kinds of things, which is really kind of cool. So a lot of sort of cool stuff on the horizon. Right now we're still at the sort of transcription phase of things. That's where the real energy is going, but I think there's going to be more and more beneficial uses of it now. But just yesterday, the Copyright Office has announced that it has launched a new artificial intelligence initiative in one of their, they do these announcements from time to time. They've been, I guess, getting requests from Congress and the public and users and creators for greater clarity on this. A week or two ago, they issued a ruling about an AI generated graphic novel, and they reversed themselves on whether or not that work was copyrightable because it was generated by AI. And so they're saying, at least among things they're saying, applicants now have a duty to disclose when they're including AI generated content. And they're even saying people have to come and update existing registrations and things like that. And then over the course of the next few months, they're going to be holding some hearings and forums, and they're calling them listening sessions on different areas: literary, visual, audiovisual, music, sound recordings, those kinds of things. So go check that out at the copyright.gov website if you're interested in hearing more about what they're doing and maybe even expressing your voice, because the way legislation in America works and regulation, they have to open it up for public comment before they implement new rules, which is actually one of the reasons that the law moves slowly, which I submit is actually a good thing. But yeah, copyright.gov is where you can go find out more about that. And I think we'll see the same thing with the Trademark Office and the Patent Office following suit. And as government starts to get into it, I think, they have to be restrained about it because innovation is happening so fast. The laws are going to keep up. That's a lot to keep up on. I mean, it really is. Like, that's the cool part. It's like it's a self-fulfilling, self-feeding system that, like with what you were saying, Elsie, where it just kind of feeds itself. When you got one AI talking to the other AI, and you got Zapier in the middle that can connect it all. It's a great time for solo folks in that way. But also really happy to hear that the folks that are leading us are also taking note of those things and being on top of it, all of 3 months into this conversation being super duper popular. Of course, like you both said, and like I think we talked about at the time, AI has been around for a long time. Descript is one of the better ones at using it in podcasts, but it's been everywhere. Anytime you don't have to do something yourself and you just click a button, kind of AI-ish. That being said, oh yeah, I knew she was going to hit me with that. Deepfakes. Also, did Gordon get hair? Is that what I'm seeing there? Is that what you wanted to show us? Just to be real clear, I did not give permission for that image to be made.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, one thing that I have to say is that I think that there are some aspects, like anything else, like we see, especially with the AI stuff, that there are so many different layers to it. Many of us don't even know exactly what to do with it or how to even use it. Like I just saw an article, something about that you can now use Chat GPT on your Apple Watch, and I was like, why? And
Respond to
I
all my
couldn't even
texts for me.
understand like why I would do that. Like I couldn't grab a like why? I barely talk to it as a whole. Like I like to press the button, not press, but tap the screen. But something that I started to use just a couple of weeks ago, and then is Otter. So Otter AI,
Yeah.
Ooh,
which
I've
and this
heard
is
of it.
for
I'm
and this is
excited
for
for
a
this.
lot, but this is a lot of other. This is a lot of other places can do this as well. These other AI functionalities. I used Otter AI for a long time prior to now. I broke up with it because they changed their pricing structure and they weren't giving me the thing that I wanted. Right. So they took that part away and they made that much more expensive. And I'm like, I'm using this because of that one thing. And you just took it away and I'm not going to be paying that. It's just not going to happen. So I kind of moved away from it. But then I came back to it and I was looking at the stuff that it was offering. And now they send that little an AI assistant to meetings. And I thought, are you kidding me? And so I had the assistant come to one because I wanted to check it out. I had it show up to one of my meetings and it was there. Like I was there, but then there was a little Elsie AI or something at the bottom it said, and it took all the notes. And I went back in there and it broke down time stamps, high level outline of the meeting, and tags of the meeting, like times we talked about keywords at the top. And I was like, oh my God, this is everything. Because sometimes I take notes in every meeting. I'm constantly typing, and just because my brain, I have ADHD, it's very easy for me to lose track of where I am all the time. And I need to be engaged in order for me to process the stuff, right? And sometimes I'll say something brilliant and then I immediately forgot what I just said. Don't ask me to repeat it because it's only a one-time deal. And so I have to have recordings, but this thing was great because I'm able to then go, oh, that's what I was talking about. And it's not for other people. It's for me. It's like, I said that. It was very clear. Now I know what I'm doing. And so it's like me talking to myself to remind myself what I said I was going to do. And so it's great.
That's awesome.
I love
I'll have to check it out because I know some people in our groups have used that, and it throws me off a little, but I just roll with it. I also have ADHD. I was diagnosed like a year ago, and I am still trying to figure out what that means for me exactly as an adult. So it sounds like something probably I should look into. So thanks for dropping that little nugget in there, Elsie. That's awesome. And I know they've been around a while. I wanted to see if I could make a quick tie and wrap up what we've kind of been going through so far today, but also what we've led up to so far in the past several weeks. And the one thing we haven't hit on is deepfakes. And something occurred to me that they're all connected in some way, because with the AI we've talked about, there are concerns about where it came from, who wrote it, who's responsible for it, who owns it. There's all this stuff. And then we've talked about privacy and all of the fuzzy stuff that comes along with even discussing privacy. I would like to submit to you, and I'm curious from a legal standpoint how this gets weird with us, but if there is more disclosures, which is somewhat disclosures to me, but against privacy a little bit. So I think that's where they connect. But is disclosures and therefore being more revealing and maybe a little less private with some things, is that an answer to deepfakes? Because AI is going to accelerate the amount of deepfakes we encounter all of the time. I am encountering more deepfake bullshit on LinkedIn than ever before. Now, like, I know how to cross my T's and dot my I's, and I'm thankful for that training. But do you feel, Gordon, like those things connect? Like I'm seeing them, or is that like a misread on how deepfakes are going to get worse potentially with AI?
No, I think the deepfake technology will, implement more artificial intelligence to do a faster, better job of what it's there to do. And I think that we're not far from the point where these things will be indistinguishable from true reality. And then we get into questions about what is truth, what is reality, what is fact. And, we've been going down this path for a while. ever since Kellyanne Conway coined the phrase alternative facts. I think maybe even before that, politicians and their use of facts. But no, I think you're right. And privacy concerns, consent concerns. I mean, Bree made let's say AI was not involved in creating that image of me with hair, because it
Just Canva.
would have been better. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of components to this, and disclosure, as you said, I think it encroaches on the privacy of the party being required to make a disclosure. But I think it also serves us to be transparent about these kinds of things, and we have to balance the interests of the public and the consumer against the interests of the person who's making the message for whatever reason, whether it's a commercial reason or a purely artistic reason or whatever. And I mean, that's what the law is always here doing, is we're balancing various interests. And I guess, again, I'm going to say the call is to us to use our voices to be heard about what's important to us and where we feel the boundaries need to be. And then, rule by committee, everybody put in your 2 cents. And then hopefully the folks in power and in leadership will take that into account and do what seems like the right thing. And, it's going to be an evolution. It's going to be a slow road.
It really will be. And that Bree just teed up kind of where my mind was anyway, in a different way. But influencers, we talked a little bit about influencers, and I think it plays into the AI, it plays into the deepfake, it plays into this whole discussion in a very, really touchy way, in my opinion. And that's with the money, because all of us are trying to get by. There are a lot of people who are out of work right now. Facebook just laid off another 10K. They're not filling a 5K. They've already laid off a bunch of people. Google, we've seen the reports. A lot of people have been laid off in the past couple of months, which is really, really tough to fathom how that industry is handling that. Like, that's a huge vacuum. 30, 40, 50,000 people who have left an industry who are educated. I think that there are going to be a lot of them that turn to our industries as influencers and podcasters and side hustlers. And we've talked about the gig economy becoming a bigger thing for years now. And I think the gig economy is about to show up in a big, big way because of all the folks that have lost their jobs. And in that vein, we have, as podcasters, especially as influencers, we've found ways to utilize AI to our advantage. And I think some of that does border on deepfake. We've talked about it in news articles. I see it in Paperly when we run our Paperly digest. I see it with emails that get sent to me that are all scheduled and artificial intelligenced out. Elsie, when it comes to the influencer piece and it comes to the monetary considerations, how does that sit in your head and your heart, maybe, about how we find a balance with those things? Because we are real people who are trying to make a living and trying to get by. And sometimes we want to find the tool that is going to give us the most leverage the quickest. But that may not be the right thing long term. Any thoughts on that?
I think that in terms of tools, I'm looking at it from two sides of it. I guess from a leadership perspective in my home, and from a place of being able to advise other creators out there, from like the best part of myself, if you will. Number one would be, as a mom, to be able to empower my kids to be able to look at media in a way that is with open eyes, so that you don't think that when you are looking at a specific picture, it's the truth around it, right? Because the digital enhancement of so many different things. I mean, I really am shocked, because I'm shocked at what you can do with images lately, and how you can completely change your face, and to not do, like, if I was shy about my nose or something and I took a picture, I could actually take every picture I put and fix it up to look exactly how I want. And anyway, but that's just one part of it. I just want to empower my kids to be able to make those decisions based on the images that they get, particularly if they're buying products or services or want to be like somebody else, to be able to make those choices in their head, at least have those right questions. Like, is this true? How else can I verify this? What am I looking at? Just to be a little bit closer when it comes to making those choices for themselves. Now, as a person who often works with other creators a lot of the time, I would say to really start to move from a place of, and I know we talk about this a lot, and when I'm talking about authenticity here, I'm talking about it from the perspective of, oh gosh, in order for us to be authentic in media, particularly with images and video, we have to be okay with ourselves. And as I tend to work primarily with women, and I know this is huge because of society, right? So we look at ourselves and immediately, at least for in the way that I was raised, we're always we need to look good. It's all about the way we look. It's all about our body types and comparing ourselves with other women. It is very hard to break through. And now, even now, thinking about as a 50-year-old woman, lines in your face and the way that reality TV completely changes your perception of what it looks like to be a 50-year-old woman, because you don't even know what you're supposed to look like anymore because we don't have that. So as a creator, my sense is to empower creators to choose to be as they are in truth.
Authentic.
And authentic, yes. But it's so hard because we often want to clean up. And so we have to work culturally together to help each other do that, because if not, we're selling lies. And that's what, and then we get back to making business off of a lie, right? What if I got lots of money to sell like a weight loss product, and like, let's say I started to gain weight, right? Let's say I'm not a thin person or whatever, and I'm selling this weight loss product, and nobody that sees me can see my entire body because I've manipulated the way that it comes out. And who cares? Because nobody's ever going to see me in real life, and I'm getting the money, right?
It's interesting. A lot of what you said reminded me of an article I just happened to see at breakfast time this morning. I was talking about it with my family. There's some studies that have been showing, TikTok is using these new filters and things like that are getting so good, and the real-time changes, as you're doing a live video, it can make you look different. And the study that they were referring to, I think it was out of London, one of the universities in London, was finding that 60 or 70% of people who are watching these are suffering from some kind of body dysmorphia because they're seeing these idealized visions. And again, it's a tool. Yes, it can make you look a little better. So is lipstick, so is eyeshadow, in a sense. So
Yep.
it's an evolution along these lines. But I think maybe we need to look at asking the TikToks of the world, and let's regulate TikTok as a rallying cry right now. I'm just saying generally, if the AIs are getting involved and you're using these filters and stuff, maybe the system should put some kind of a bug or an imprint to indicate that it's there, just as a little hint. Hey, this is not entirely authentic, not entirely real. And I think that in the influencer arena and the transparency arena, these tools, these AIs, can come in and start watching what we're posting and asking us, hey, it looks like you're posting an endorsement. Do you need to put a disclosure? Click yes, and it would do it for you. So that's where the tools can be really beneficial, is helping us avoid the under-inclusive, where we fail to do a disclosure, just sort of increasing our consciousness of these things. And I think these tools can be trained to watch for the signals of endorsements and advertising and paid messaging and those kinds of things, and maybe help us do a better job of creating that transparency, like putting an indicator. I've been kidding around a little bit that what we really need is some kind of a badge, a certificate of 100% human authorship, things like that. But maybe the converse, we should say, hey, AI was involved in making this, and make that a standard disclosure.
I think that would certainly help to have some sort of gauge, and I've heard ChatGPT has started to do that, so credit to them where it's due. I think those things are going to be necessary. Descript doesn't do that, so there's a lot of companies that are going to need to get on board with that concept, because as we
have to draw lines. Where are these lines?
Sure, yeah, it's definitely that. Before I don't say, Elsie, thank you for saying that. I have a niece. I'm an uncle. I don't have kids myself, but I have a niece. She's gonna be 4 soon, and I worry constantly about the world that she's going to grow up into as a girl, as a young girl, somebody who maybe identifies as a girl. And it means a lot to me that you push for those things for your kids and that you have a voice in it. I'm going to try not to get weird about it because my mom just left and I miss my niece terribly. But it really does mean a lot to me that you hold the mantle up and you provide such a shining light to have that conversation. It's really, really important that culturally we have it, I think. And it's got to come from not me.
There's also another thing I want to bring to light and for us to kind of get into that fuzzy space as well, because a lot of these tools, I mean, I'm seeing it from that perspective too, that you were talking about, Gordon, about the body dysmorphia and the imbalance that it might create on somebody's self-esteem. But it also can be an opportunity for, let's say somebody is having, like a teenager that's having some pretty serious breakouts or acne happening on their face, and they're going to school that day, and or they get their pictures back from school, and they feel very like it really hurts to see that on a picture, to be able to put that picture in and remove a little bit of that and kind of clarify the skin a little bit so that they feel more empowered to share that image and to be able to feel good about themselves without, and that's not a lie, right? We wouldn't want anybody to step forward and be the worst part of them. Like when you feel awful, like I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like we don't do that to human beings. We just don't do that. You don't feel okay wearing that outfit or whatever. We like, let's get you something else. Right. So there are parts where it can be incredibly empowering, especially for me, where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to clean up that little thing here, or we can say like, oh, we can clean it up. Don't worry about it. We can just do this. So yeah.
Like any tool, you know, it can be incredibly empowering or disempowering depending on how it's used and whether it's used responsibly. And, you know, so yeah, I mean, should that high school kid with all the pimples on their face feel like they have to include a little indicator? Oh, I used AI to fix this. That may, that's the privacy thing, Trevor, you were talking about earlier. It takes away something from the way they want to present themselves to the world. When it's a commercial message, I think it's an easier analysis to do because we want consumers to know what we're getting. But
there's a lot of us that are commercial now.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, it's one of those things too, where, you know, when folks, especially, I have reality on TV on my brain, guys, sorry. But anyway, most of those folks, you know, sometimes they tend to hide the fact that they get work done when everybody knows, but they never admit it. They just never admit it. That said, though, should we require it? Right? If you see a picture of them and go like, those are fake, that you see up top, that's fake that you see at the bottom, you know, is that a thing? Like, is that something that you have to disclose, or is that a privacy thing? Is that yours to know? And even if you're like not selling, let's say it's a very tight top or something, you're not necessarily selling, you're selling the top. You're not selling.
But if a woman who's had a boob job is selling bras and bikinis, I think it does become relevant. You know, but celebrity image has been enhanced.
Right. Well, I know. And so when does that disclosure happen, or should it be? I mean, in terms of magazines or running the walk, like, you know, taking a walk in the runway, is this going to be like a disclosure of like so-and-so actor has had, or model? Because it just feels so... that would be so bizarre.
If the lines weren't fuzzy, we wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Right. If it was easy, then I don't know. I guess if it was easy, ChatGPT would have a much cleaner road to taking over the world, and that is I
believe, and you know, not even for men, I mean for men too. I believe that this I did not read the article, but there was and not a disclosure as in like somebody made this actor disclose, but in an interview, I guess it's for one of those Netflix, you know, series, there's a shot of the man who's like on with the, you know, underwear, and he had some stuff in the underwear that was not him. But
you know what? It's about time we had some mechanisms to keep up with the neighbors.
All I'm saying, But all I'm saying is that, that would be the same thing. It's sort of like, where does one disclose that, right? Like, where does that, like, and it just seems like an odd thing to be putting somewhere. Where do you even put it?
Yeah. Hey, we really ought to jump into the privacy stuff
yes.
again a little bit further, because it's been a big week for
Yes,
news
it
in the
has.
privacy arena. And, last week, Elsie, you were talking, as I mentioned earlier, about protecting your location, where is it you are, and being very circumspect about revealing where you are and where you're going and where you live and those kinds of things. And it came to a real slap in the face. Reality came and talked and showed us something about this last week. Do you want to quickly just mention what happened? And
yeah, I mean, as a whole, in terms of just like covering the vast amount of home of the story, a woman who was an audio streamer. So audio streamer in this context, she was somebody who had a Clubhouse show. For those of you who may or may not know, Clubhouse is like a audio app where you could have meetups, if you will, or meetings or shows that are based audio only through your phone, and people show up live, kind of like what we're doing right now and streaming out to all the different places, but it's in one app and it's only audio. So there's no pictures or anything, and people show up there and talk and all that stuff.
Yeah, sort of an audio party line kind of
It's
thing,
like an audio party line. Absolutely. Like Zoom calls on steroids. And
so the headlines called her a podcaster, but actually she was a Clubhouser.
Yes, and actually there's an article, I believe, from the New York Times that called her an audio streamer.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, though, she was there and she became friends they started messaging with a gentleman who was in there, a man who was in there, who was messaging her, and they kind of, I guess, became friends, and they continued to talk with one another, and I don't know, and have further communications. I'm not sure if there were exchanges of content that happened of information, as in like, here's my phone number. Like, I don't know if it went that far, but he began to behave badly in some way, shape, or form that really made her feel afraid of this man. And she started to go through the process of trying to get a restraining order for this man. Before that restraining order could come to pass, he broke into her house in Washington State and murdered her and her husband. And the victim's mom was able to escape and get help. And then the man killed himself. And so it seemed like he was a truck driver, and he was able to get all of this information, just like he just was able to get it all.
He was able to deduce a lot of it just from the context of things that were said in the chats and we talked earlier about the doxing situation where the gal was able to identify someone's birthday with just a few minutes of research. And I guess this really is the example that argues for all of us being more careful about sharing our information. And I think, as I said last week, as a woman, you have a very different set of concerns or different perspective on the concerns than the men do. I don't worry too much about somebody coming to my house and finding me, and I mean, with weird obsessions and things like that. I guess if I really make somebody angry, that's another story. But women really have to be more careful, careful about this kind of stuff. And not saying whether that's good or bad, it's just the way it is. But I think we all need to be thoughtful about that. And maybe the guys, we don't ask, hey, where do you live? And to make it easier not to be so public about everything. And, so we talked about that authenticity we were referring to earlier. And then, the converse is the privacy and, frankly, the need for security. When you are completely authentic with the world, your need for security goes your exposure to danger increases, and so the need for security rises.
I think especially as creators, that's something for us to really think about. As a podcaster, for me, one of the things that made me fall in love with podcasting was the access that I had to the podcasters that I loved. I was able to connect with them very easily. I was able to touch base with them very easily. And I got responses, and they open their arms to me, and it's how I stepped into this industry, which is incredible, right? We were able to meet up and do all these wonderful things. So I love the accessibility and the back and forth with audience. But at the same time, I think that one layer that I feel is a miss is the fact that if I come here and I say, hey, send me your feedback, or you start to communicate with me, the expectation of that behavior back and forth, or of me responding to something, that means that we are now friends in some way, that we are now in a relationship that you might view as different than I view. And so I really take care of who I respond to and when. And because I don't want to ever set a precedent for that instant access to me, whatever that might be. And I don't want to, and it's so funny how we're often taught, at least I was taught, don't walk the same way all the time. Make sure that you break patterns in your behavior, because that's a great way for people to learn that where you're going and where you tend to go and all that stuff. So I'm aware of that. And now I'm aware of it in my digital behavior, so that I know I can be like, I'm going to be on Twitter, I'm going to be on Facebook. Like for myself, I tend to be there in the morning. But to me, that it's okay for me to let people kind of get an idea of like, oh, Elsie tends to be here in the morning. That's fine. That's not making me feel unsafe. But sometimes I tend to also schedule things to go out in the morning so that it looks as if I am active in the morning always. So I don't get people to infer what my lifestyle is based on those imprints. So it's just something that I've started to do, because I don't want to give you access to me.
Yeah. Those are. I'm just over here, and I really, really appreciate the depth around that. Both of the last conversations, those were tough ones, and especially this one where it got real. Like you said, it got real really fast for these two human beings, or these three human beings, and everybody that loved them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff at stake when things like this happen, when things like murder happen over, like you said, some false impressions maybe of what it could mean. And I wanted to pass along a little advice from a business side. I see that's what she was prompting up to. Along, Elsie, like you said, be aware and be intentional with your steps wherever they are. That's really, really good advice. I would say also, from a brand standpoint, consider filing an LLC, considering getting a PO box. Those are very practical, accessible solutions, especially the PO box, to disassociating yourself from a specific location. It's one thing I constantly have a concern about, because when you register your business, whether it be a DBA or an LLC, or you register your business for a business account, on any account that you might have to put your address, all of those things are traceable to your whatever address you put. And a very simple and above board way to keep your address private is to get a PO box, or to create an LLC that disassociates you a little bit from that brand you're putting out there, because there are limited options to protect yourself, because we do have to register everything, it seems like, including
and
our address.
I'll say, the PO box and the corporate entity kind of thing isn't foolproof. In fact, in the trademark law space, I'm actually seeing a lot of discussion about this. When you go to register a trademark, the trademark office insists on a domicile address, so they won't accept a PO box. They won't accept a non-residential address, and so they actually use the phrase the place where you sleep is what's supposed to be registered. And this is a real problem in this day and age, where a lot of businesses are run out of people's homes, and you don't have a separate business address, which is a little bit of a luxury. I'm very fortunate. I have separate phone number, separate address, separate emails for business stuff. We can't all afford to do that, and we can't all and it's a really big issue. Amy, yikes and holy moly in the chat. It's a really big issue in the trademark space right now, and unfortunately, we had a problem with a lot of bogus applications for companies and people that don't really exist. And so the reaction was, well, we want to know a real address. and we're still feeling our way. And I think we have to press our representatives to be thoughtful and mindful about this. I think this, if we're going to find some good that comes out of stories like this audio streamer murder situation, it may be that it is an example we can hold up as to why privacy needs to be respected, and we need to have other ways of doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for a really, really fantastic conversation today. We covered a lot of ground. We had a chance to both look backwards, which was fun, update a lot of things, because most of what we have talked about is very fast-paced, very fast-moving information, especially with the AI, because the AI really does impact a lot of what we're doing as creators and as business people right now. It's not a hot topic on accident. It's a hot topic because it's in our face all of the time right now. I mean, every day. So right now, Bree is running the Sonic Bloom Awards. Elsie, do you mind telling us what it takes to qualify for the Sonic Bloom Awards?
Oh my gosh, the Sonic Bloom Awards. It's a one kind of award that we have in the podcasting space. Really, it's to recognize podcasting projects that were created and hosted by underrepresented voices across the globe. And they are really inspirational in nature. So they are less like the, how would I say it? Like best comedy podcast, best, true crime podcast. We have, the categories are super delicious. There's like one that's called the Icon Award. There's another one that's called the Golden Mic, which is a podcaster of the year type of award. There's a Gender Justice Award. There's a Voice of the People Award. Those are just actually one of the categories, because we do have things that are around craft, like the craft as in like cover art masterpiece awards, right? Like somebody who has amazing cover art, or there's innovation awards. There are industry awards, right? The Helping Hand Award, where you can award somebody who really does a lot for the space. And you can still go and nominate your people that you want as part of this. And we can celebrate each other. Go check it out over at sonicbloomawards.com and get your people that you feel match into the running here, so that we can really make sure that we highlight those voices that, oftentimes with so many different things, we don't get the awards. This is going to get you an award.
Heck yeah. I love that. That's so cool. Oh, and this is the show that you do weekly, and also the conference that is coming up. Is that correct?
She Podcast Live is coming up in June. Yes, correct. We said mid-June in Washington, D.C., and it's going to be awesome.
Woo. And if anybody wants to stay updated on all things, well, not all things Elsie, but on She Podcasts, that is the right home base to go look at. They have a weekly podcast that is phenomenal. It is hilarious and also informative, but hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
And I strongly encourage you to check out She Podcast. Gordon also has, he does it solo because it's legal. It is very legal focused, and Gordon covers topics that relate to what we talk about a lot. It's oftentimes an extension or a precursor. What do you got coming up this week, Gordon?
Well, it's actually a week from Monday, March 27th. We're holding the Business and Legal Fundamentals for Growth and Profit, for podcast growth and profit. It's a free workshop online that I'll be doing, where I'm going to talk about the kinds of prerequisites that there are for truly professional results as a podcaster, and for essential components for a solid professional business-like approach to podcasting and really any entrepreneurial activity. I'm going to share some of the biggest mistakes that podcasters make that hold them back from easy growth and success. And I'm going to give some secrets on how you can quickly and easily get your business and legal affairs for your podcast up and running without having to come and hire guys like me with thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket expense up front and those kinds of things. So really want to provide as much information for podcasters as possible so that they can get themselves positioned for the kind of success they dream of. And, a lot of it is just about having all the ducks in a row and being ready when opportunity knocks, because I've seen too often opportunity comes along and okay, great, I love it, I want to do it, but you got to wait while I get these things fixed up and ready to go, and then interest wanes and things go away. So just want to help folks be ready, and that's coming up on March 27th, 9:00 Pacific in the morning. You can head over to podcastlaw.net to register for that program. So looking forward to that. I'm also doing Podfest Global is coming up that same week. Seems like everything's happening that week. And I'll be giving a talk for true crime podcasters and how to sort of stay out of the legal crosshairs when you're doing true crime.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds so good.
It sounds like it might cross over into some of what we talked about when it's true crime anyway. So
Yes, indeed.
It will be interesting. That's a really fun topic for a different day, is true crime and podcasting and revealing secrets and privacy. Oh my gosh, it all overlaps into one really fun thing that podcasters somehow get to be the center of, because it is freelance journalism at its finest. Gosh, I love it. This is the wrap as we get close to the end here today. I want to tell everybody we'll be back next week, Friday. It is 8 a.m. Pacific, to talk more Fuzzy Lawgic with Gordon Firemark and Elsie Escobar. I want to get that little graphic out of the way, and it will be on all things Numospect. Numospect Media runs it through our YouTube. Gordon, do you have this show on your YouTube? And Elsie, do you have it on your YouTube, or is it just on ours right now?
I don't really use my YouTube very often, so not on my YouTube.
No worries.
I am mirroring on my various social channels, so folks are seeing it everywhere. We're
cool.
Bombarding them with it.
Well, access is nice. Not every platform works for everyone. That's why I do love Restream, is because I am not always keen on all those other... Facebook. I can't wait to delete my Facebook. It's so close. I'm so close to being done with them.
Today's episode is not brought to you by Facebook.
Next week, we'll be back to talk more Fuzzy Lawgic with Elsie and Gordon. I am Trevor Tomian, on behalf of Numospect and Bree. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for Fuzzy Lawgic.
Yay.